perfect height. I was a virgin until I was 30 years old. Thank you. I had a boyfriend, but I wasn't ready in high school, and in college, the first boy who saw me naked said, "No thanks," so I wasn't in so much of a rush after that. And then after a series of missteps and false starts, it just sort of didn't happen and became a thing. It became sort of like this cloud hanging over every relationship I started. When do I tell him? To put too much pressure on the relationship, and it just became this thing. But I went to a very small conservatory arts high school in Miami, Florida. It was really small, 100 kids in every grade, 400 kids in the whole school total, and everybody knew everybody. There was, one prom party, one graduation party, because there weren't enough people to have more than one party. And there was this one guy who I didn't know in high school. One guy. His name was Seneca Black. And I know his name sounds like the rich playboy on a soap opera. And he looked like the rich playboy on a soap opera too. He was just like strikingly handsome, even in high school. He was a music major, I was a theater major, surprise. And so we just, for some reason, my whole high school experience, he was the only one that I never had a class with, never had a reason to interact with. So I always wondered about Seneca Black. So cut to our 10-year high school reunion. I got super drunk, said some things to some people, and I don't remember a whole lot about the reunion because I was so drunk, but I do remember that I kissed Seneca Black. And I remember that the only thing I remember was that it was outside under the stars and it was lovely. That's all I remember. Right after the reunion, literally like 2 days after the reunion, I moved to LA. And Seneca and I became friends on MySpace, because that was a long time ago. And we just sort of struck up this friendship, and we had a lot in common. And a couple years later, I went to New York to see the Spice Girls at Madison Square Garden, as you do. And we met up for a drink, and Seneca enlightened me on how that magical moment under the stars happened. Apparently, this delicate flower was standing outside, probably too drunk to breathe inside, when he went outside to check a message, and I yelled out to him, "You! Right here! Right now!" Classy. So we had a few laughs about this, and we just had a great night catching up, like if we were old high school friends, which we sort of were. We had all the same frames of references, we grew up in the same place, and that night we actually wound up spending the night together, but it was very innocent. Like nothing happened, we just stayed up all night talking and catching up. I told him all about my history or lack thereof, and we just sort of like made out like we were in 7th grade, and it was awesome. And I went back to LA and we continued our friendship and just sort of catching up with each other. And then a couple years later, I was back in New York, and it was a few days before my 31st birthday. And I thought, I just gotta get this done. Being a 30-year-old virgin is a thing, right? It's like a really good start to a story. But like stepping into my 30s, still a virgin, I had this like wave of panic over me, sort of like this like use it or lose it mentality, and I did not want to lose it. Well, I mean, I wanted to lose it, but you know what I mean. So I thought, Seneca Black will probably be game. I mean, like, we have a connection, clearly, like we're good friends, and there's definitely some sort of an attraction, and there'll be no sort of pressure, no sense of, well, what happens next in our relationship? Just sort of, it is what it is, right? We're just good friends who have this connection. So he's still a musician, of course he is. So he was playing at this jazz club in Manhattan, and it was just like 2 blocks away from where I was house sitting for a friend of mine. So I went to the show, and when I got there, he was standing outside of the club, and when he saw me, he gave me this giant bear hug, like really squeezed me so tight and picked me up off the ground, and I thought, well, this is a good sign. And when he put me down, I could tell that something was off, and I asked him if he was nervous, and he told me that he had just found out that his mom had had a massive stroke, and she wasn't doing well, and he was going to be leaving early the next morning to drive down to Pennsylvania to see her and possibly say goodbye. And I felt awful because I am a horrible person, and the one thing going through my mind was, I am never going to have sex. But we went into the show, and it was actually really beautiful to see him play so wonderfully through everything that was going on, everything that he was feeling. And after the show, we were both hungry and nothing was open in the neighborhood, so we decided to go back to the place where I was house sitting because I had some leftover Chinese food from the night before. And we just went back for Chinese food and conversation, which at this point was really all I was expecting. And, in our talking over the couple of years that we had built up this friendship, I told him all about my non-experience and whatever. And so we sort of laughed about that. And he talked a lot about his mom, and it was really nice. And then something really magical happened. And I don't know if it was because he was reaching out and he needed comfort, and I was reaching out because I just needed a friend. I needed someone that knew me, knew my history, and I could trust. But we started kissing, and we moved into the bedroom, and because he knew all of my past or non-past, he was really sweet and just always sort of making sure I was comfortable with whatever was happening. And we had some technical difficulties at first. It's never been easy for me. I actually have tried before, but also something I did for the first time when I was 30, was I learned how to use a tampon. So I was like, well, I know how to do that. So I got on top and I was like, I just took matters into my own hands, and then boop, we were in business. And so I've seen a couple movies, right? So I was kind of just like, am I doing it? And he's like, yep, you're doing it. And I was like, dude, look at me, I'm having sex. He's like, yeah, me too. High five. And that is how I lost my virginity. And it was sweet and hilarious and silly and wonderful and beautiful. And I've heard a lot of my friends who lost their virginity very young say that it was sort of awful and awkward and painful, and they have a lot of regrets because they either don't even remember the guy, or the second it was over, he was gone. And that's really upsetting to me because 5 years and 2 shitty boyfriends later, this is still like the time to beat. And he stayed with me all night until he literally got in his car to drive to Pennsylvania. And just like my friends who lost their virginity in high school, I can still open my yearbook and see the guy that I lost my virginity to. The difference, he was kind and patient, and there was total trust. He's a friend that I will always have, and I was fully grown into myself and ready for the experience. And you know what? It was worth the wait, and I have no regrets. Thank you.